5 lies your mind tells you when you're feeling anxious. So earlier this year, I've already done a podcast on 5 lies your mind tells you when you're feeling depressed. And this was episode 108. I would love for you to go check it out. It would be very helpful. In this podcast, I want to talk about how your mind tells you different lies when you're feeling anxious. And the reason why is because I need you guys to be on guard. I need you guys to be aware of all the tricks that the mind tries to play on you when you're feeling this way. Because just like in football, basketball, or any sport, when you know what the defense is going to do, it's easier for you as the offense to counteract them and to score against them. And that's what we want to do with the mind. We want to be able to score some of these goals against the mind when it's trying to play this little game on us, when it's trying to put up this mirage, or it's trying to show us that things are not what it actually appears to be honest. So that's what we're going to do in this episode. And before I get to the first lie, make sure you subscribe to this channel so you can get more life-changing information like this. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into it. So the first lie that I want to get to actually comes from a study that I read that I've been sharing with a lot of my clients recently. And in this study, what happened was that a lot of psychologists got together and decided to have a bunch of the participants in the study write down all the negative things that they were fearing that was going to happen, that they thought was going to happen. So they wrote down all the things, and what they did was 6 months later, they got those people back into that same room and they asked them, out of that list of negative things that you were fearing, how many of these things actually happened? And there's a surprise that happened, as you can imagine. What they come to find out was that 85% of the things that they were afraid of never even happened. Think about that. 85% of the stuff that they were worrying about, that they were anxious about, had fears about, never even happened. And I was like, whoa, like you got to rewind that back. Like, are you telling me that there's a chance that 85% of the things that I am personally worried about today won't even happen? Meaning that only 15% of these things that I'm worried about could happen? Like, if I believe that, then right there, I would have a lot of confidence. My confidence would shoot through the roof, right? And I thought what was even great about this study was that when they found out that 15% of the things that did happen, they asked them, do you feel that you were capable, that you had it within you to handle that last 15%? So again, if they wrote down 100 things that they were afraid of, 85% of those things didn't happen, but that last 15% of those things that they were afraid of, it did happen. And what the psychologist asked them was, when it comes to that 15%, right, those 15 things that did happen, do you feel that you had it within you to handle those things? And 79% of them said yes. So when you add up those numbers, right, 85% of the stuff didn't happen, and then out of that last 15%, 79% of they were able to handle, it came out to being that 97% of the stuff that they all worried about, they were able to overcome it. Whether it was because it never happen or because that it did happen and they had the strength, the tools, and even the resources to overcome these things. So why am I saying this, right? What I'm trying to tell you is that 97% of the things that you're worried about, you actually have it within you to overcome it. And that right there leads me to the first point that I want to make. The first point, or the first lie that anxiety tells you, is that something bad will happen and that you won't be able to overcome it, that you won't be able to recover from it. That is probably one of the biggest lies that the mind tells you. And once you realize that that is a lie, your confidence will shoot through the roof. This is why I love asking my clients, if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you start to do next? Because there's a 97% chance that you'll be able to handle whatever comes down your way as you're focused on your goal, as you're going down this path of success. That is a lot of confidence. That gives me a lot of confidence. Even in the podcast I did earlier, I talked about how when you have a coach, when you have goals that are written down and you have action steps with those goals, you're actually 76% likely to accomplish those goals versus only 33% chance likely to accomplish them if you don't have goals written and if you don't have a coach, right? Think about what I'm saying. If you realize these two things, it should tell you that all the things that you want in life is in arm's grasp. It's right there. You're able to attain these things. But the mind, it will lie to you and tell you that something bad will happen and that you would never be able to overcome it. And that is the first lie that I want you guys to realize. So again, what I'm trying to say is that 97% of the stuff that you're worried about, you have it within you to overcome it. So trust that, and you should be able to identify what path you should be going down and not the path that your mind is telling you is right for you. Lie number 2 that your mind tells you when you're feeling anxious is that you have to get rid of your anxiety first before you can take this next step. Again, huge lie, big lie. And the reason why is because anxiety can actually be seen as those little jet boosters that you see behind a rocket as it's shooting up into the sky. Anxiety has a lot of power. It has the power to motivate you. And there's a good chance right now your anxiety of not being able to pay your mortgage, not being able to pay your rent, being fired from your job, or going bankrupt in your business, there's a good chance that that anxiety is what gets you up in the morning. It what makes you make sure that your performance is on par. These are the things that anxiety can actually do for you that is good. But anxiety will make you think that you have to get rid of them. And actually, anxiety is actually good for you. It's healthy for you. And this leads me to a study that I love sharing with my clients whenever I'm talking about confidence and anxiety, which is Yerkes and Dotson's law. So you can Google this, and I really hope that you do. But when you Google Yerkes and Dotson's law, what you will see is that there's this bell chart that describes our anxiety in relation to our performance. And what you start to see is that as your anxiety increases, so does your performance. Now, what we want to be careful is that we don't want to have so much anxiety that we can't focus, that it rocks us and we're not able to put our best foot forward. Because when that happens, your performance starts to decrease. And that's where this bell chart comes from. So at the beginning, when there's no anxiety, there's no fear, right? So nothing to lose, your performance tends to be pretty low. And the reason why is because you have nothing to lose. But when you start to get a little bit more anxiety, so this is the power of deadlines. When those deadlines start to creep up on you, you start to go, I should probably start to take action towards these goals. I should probably get that first step completed now before I have to sweat about it later. This is what deadlines do for it. This is what anxiety does for us. And this is why I said anxiety is kind of like that rocket packet that's on the back of every spaceship, if you will. So the lie here is that you have to get rid of anxiety before you can take your next step. When you get rid of your anxiety, you're actually getting rid of your superpower. Anxiety is the thing that's actually going to push you, motivate you to take an action. So don't get rid of it, embrace it. Lie number 3 that your mind tells you when it comes to your anxiety is that if you obey me, right? So this is your mind talking. So your mind tells you that if you obey me, your anxiety will go away. And here's the thing, your mind isn't lying. But the thing is that your anxiety only goes away temporarily. A lot of people tend to avoid tough things because they know that they'll get that instant relief if they decide not to speak on stage, not to start that business, not to go across the bar and talk to that cute guy or cute girl and try to get their number. Anxiety knows that if I can convince you not to go and do that thing, you will feel relief. And that's what the mind is searching for. It is searching for safety. It's not searching for pleasure or comfort or anything like that, right? It's searching for safety. And that's what the mind is trying to get you to do. It's trying to get you to find the best route to keep you safe. And that's not what you want. You want to feel fulfilled. You want to be happy. You want to be able to access your dreams that you have on your dream board, right? But you can only do that when you disobey your mind. And this is something that we have to keep in mind. The mind is not always going to be our best friend. It's not always going to be our best guide. This is why we have to learn to step outside of our mind. And to do that, start to acknowledge your mind. Give your mind an identity. Give it a name, which is something I tell a lot of my clients to do. Because when your mind has its name, when your mind has its own identity, you can then decide, do you want to obey or disobey what the mind is trying to tell you? So this lie here, he's kind of lying. The thing is that when he tells you that your anxiety go away, it's just that it'll go away temporarily. Because the thing that happens is that anxiety actually exacerbates the next time it comes around. This is where I've seen clients who have avoided things that have feared them, that gives them a little bit of anxiety. I've seen them avoid them. And what happens is that there's this waterfall, this avalanche of anxiety that comes the next time around that they're faced with this obstacle, challenge, or action that they want to take. So in order to cut that, in order to get the rewards that we're looking for, we have to go for the delayed gratification, meaning that we have to embrace the fear, the anxiety now, right? And then the peace and the comfort and all that stuff will come later. It'll come after you accomplish the goal, right? And this is where some of the excitement and motivation comes when we're going through the goal attainment process, if you will. So the lie here is, if you obey me, your anxiety will go away. That is a lie. The anxiety, it will hide itself for a little while, but it's gonna come back with a vengeance. Trust me. Lie number 4 that your mind tells you when it comes to your anxiety is that your anxiety is actually your enemy. A lot of people I've seen have cursed their anxiety because they feel like it has just ruined their life, and rightfully so. Whenever you're trying to do something that is important to you, something that, has a lot of value, the nervousness that we get comes from the fear of not having this thing. It's because you want it so bad that you can't even imagine your life without this goal, this person, this just dream job, this dream business, right? Like, to have a life without those things would be scary. And that's where the anxiety comes from. When you think about the enemy, I love to go to this quote from Sun Tzu, who's a Chinese military colonel, right? And he was very famous. This was a long time ago. And he's wrote a book called The Supreme Art of War. And in this book, he actually talks about many different strategies when it comes to war. But he has this one that he quotes. He says that the supreme art of war is to subdue your enemy without fighting. We're going to take that same approach with our mind. Trust me, even to this day, whenever I set goals for myself, especially the really big ones, my mind would tell me that, man, are you sure you want this? I don't know. This looks a little dangerous. It looks a little scary. I don't know if we can do it. My mind throws up a fuss, a hissy fit. It's kind of like a kid that we have to drag to the dentist's office. The mind will do that, but it's okay. Because I tell my mind, hey, I got us covered. I have us covered. And I love saying that because the mind, at the end of the day, it thinks it's doing what's right for you, but in actuality, it's not. And that's where we have to step in and make the decisions for ourselves. The thing that we get confused with is that we think our mind has all the power, when in actuality it doesn't. The mind has to do and has to follow what it is that you're doing. When you decide to take that step forward, your mind is going to put up a hissy fit. He's going to shout, he's going to fuss, but he's eventually going to come with you. It's because you decided to go. When you make that decision, the mind, it'll get in line. It may take a little while, but he'll start to get in line. And we've personally seen this because there's things that you have accomplished today that at one point was scary for you. At one point, you didn't think that you could do it. It may be a job. It may be buying your first rental property. I definitely know for me, this YouTube journey has definitely been a crazy one. Starting out having no views, having maybe 1 or 2 subscribers, like, it was really, really tough. But as I kept going down this process, I've been consistent for this past year, and I've slowly started to see a lot of growth. Slowly started to see things fall in my favor. And this is my mind now saying, I guess you were right. It may still say, hey, you still got a long way to go, but it's okay. This is the proof that we sometimes have to show our mind when it comes to these big goals, because sometimes our goals can seem like Mount Everest when we're trying to accomplish them. And as a result, the mind wants to conserve energy for something that it may deem as a threat. This is kind of the idea behind lions and why they're seen as kind of lazy, right? Lions, they typically, they lay down in the safari, they don't take too much action, they don't take too much steps, but when it sees its prey, man, it is the most scariest thing in the jungle. Our mind is like that too, where it doesn't want to move too much. It wants us to stay safe. It wants us to conserve our energy for if they see an opportunity, or rather even something scary, it can then mobilize, it can then move. But that's not how things should work. We need to be constantly moving, constantly taking action. And that's what the mind is trying to stop us from doing. But again, you have this ability to do this. You have this ability to take action. So again, lie number 4 is that your mind is telling you that your anxiety is the enemy, and it's not. It's actually a really great friend. It's such a great friend that he thinks that he's doing right by you by telling you you shouldn't go after this dream. You shouldn't go after this goal. And point number 5, the last lie, and before I give it to you, make sure you subscribe to this channel. So the last lie that your mind tells you when you feel anxious is that you have to be perfect in order to get rid of me. Now, this is the mother of all lies, right? Like, I see so many people struggling with perfection because they believe that that is the only way to be acceptable. That is the only way to have a good quality life. And that's not the case. That is far from it. I can make the argument that the people that are striving for perfection are probably the most depressed people out there. And the reason why is because there's not too many things in this world that's perfect. So if you need perfection in order to have a good life, if you need perfection in order to feel good about yourself, if you need perfection in order to take the next step, trust me when I say you're going to be waiting for a while. You're going to find yourself in this place of suffering. One can almost call it like an internal hell, if you will. And that's not something that you have to deal with. To get rid of your anxiety, and actually that even shouldn't be the goal, but to lessen your anxiety, all you have to do is take steps forward and see that the thing that you're afraid of is actually not going to happen. The judgments that you're trying to avoid is not going to be there. But even if someone judges you, even if something bad happens, you'll find that you have the ability to overcome it. I know myself, I can speak to this, and you probably can speak to this as well, the person that's listening, but there have been a lot of tough and unfortunate and uncomfortable things that have happened in your life and my life, but yet we're still here, but yet we're still standing. I mean, man, I've gone through some embarrassing moments in my life, and yet I'm still able to stand here in front of you and tell you that I still feel good about myself. I still feel that I'm a worthy individual, someone that is worthy to chase all their goals, someone that is worthy to be here and to be acknowledged, someone that is worthy to be on this earth. And that is something that helps me to get through sometimes the discomfort and, let's just say, some of the failures that I may go through. Even through those failures, even through the discomfort, I'm worthy and so are you. You know, perfection, it is by far one of the backlashes, one of the dark sides of social media. You know, I can make the argument that the world wasn't created for everyone to be in touch or in contact with every single person. You know, like social media has created a way for everybody to see what everybody is doing. And we have this ability to put up the highlight reels, put up a facade, if that is the case, and show people that, hey, everything on our side is fine, when really they're not. And that's not to say that that's bad. You know, I actually had a friend of mine, they reached out to me on social media, and we were talking because we both recently had kids, and I remember them making a comment. They said, wow, you just look so happy. And I was like, huh, you know, I never thought as my content as being one that showed that, like, I'm happy. You know, I'm just really just showing myself, you know. So that may be my family, that may be some of my work stuff, it may be some accomplishments that maybe I've had here and there, but I never took it as me being happy as one of the first things that people get when they look at my content. Because here's the thing, there's been times where I haven't felt that. There's been times where, man, I've, you know, felt very, very frustrated at myself. But here's the thing, man, just like the weather, those things will come. And just like you, it will come. There will be a day that comes where, you know, you're not perfect, but can you show that imperfection to other people? Can you take actions when things aren't perfect? And that is the power of vulnerability. I did an episode on that a few episodes ago, but the power of vulnerability actually teaches us something that's very important, and it teaches us the idea of self-acceptance. Being able to accept all of you helps you to feel confident in yourself, because there's no facade that you're putting up. You know, who you are is worthy no matter what room you go in. You know, I love this about myself. You know, one time I went to a conference and I remember telling people that are like just wildly successful, you know, making 6 and 7 figures. I remember telling them that, you know, my business was crumbling, you know, and this was a few years ago. But I remember telling them that my business was crumbling, and I remember how receptive they were, because every one of them told me that they've been through that similar journey. And what that did for me was that it allowed me to not focus so much on the fact that at this moment it was crumbling, and it allowed me to focus on what I needed to do to take it to a place where it was successful. So that is a big lie, guys. You don't need to be perfect in order to get rid of your anxiety. All you need to do is just take an action, just take a step forward, honestly, and you start to see that the thing that you were worried about wasn't even there. It wasn't even a thing that happened. So with that being said, I'm gonna review these 5 lies that your mind tells you when you're feeling anxious. And again, make sure you subscribe to this channel. So the first lie is that something bad will happen. You know, that is a big lie that your mind tells you. And as I told you, there was a study that showed that 85% of things we worry about never even happen. Lie number 2 is that you have to get rid of me first. So this is your mind talking. You have to get rid of me first before you can take your next step, right? And what I mean by your mind, I mean the anxiety, the anxious thoughts. You don't have to get rid of that stuff. Your anxiety actually helps you to perform better. Point number 3, this is your mind again speaking. It says, if you obey me, your anxiety will go away. And here's the thing, if you obey your mind, your anxiety will go away, but that's only temporary. And when the anxiety comes back, it will come back with a vengeance. And then the 4th lie is that your mind tells you when you're anxious is that, hey, your anxiety is your enemy. And that is not the case. Your anxiety is actually a very helpful friend, almost too helpful in terms of trying to get you to take the safest route. And honestly, I can even say this, your anxiety actually gives you important information. I actually did this in an earlier podcast, but your anxiety can actually show you what areas of your life you need to work on, okay? So if you're an entrepreneur and you look at all the things that are required of you, if you feel that you get the most anxious when you're doing your sales pitch, then clearly we need to work on the sales part. If you're an entrepreneur and you feel like the part where you get the most anxious is when you're producing video content or content marketing, then we probably need to work on that piece, right? So we need to get in the gym, metaphorically, and start practicing shooting content, right? So your anxiety can show you what you need to work on. And then the 5th lie is that your mind is telling you that you need to be perfect in order to get rid of me, and that is absolutely not the case. To get rid of your anxiety, or as I said, to lessen it, all you have to do is take a step forward. You just got to be vulnerable. You just got to be willing to be imperfect to show you that being perfect is not necessary. Because the people that are the perfectionists, if you will, these typically tend to be the most depressed and anxious people out there because nothing in life is perfect. So as a result, they are really struggling. So with that being said, my name is Coach Wells. I am a licensed therapist, and thank you for checking out this podcast.